I grew up in a low-income, low-middle-class income family in Brooklyn, New York, 3.5-room rent-controlled apartment. And growing up without a whole lot of money, George, that has been, I think, the most significant educational factor, if you like, in my life. I know what it's like to live in a family without a lot of money. The last 30 years, I've been standing up for the working families of this country, and I think I'm the only candidate who is prepared to take on the billionaire class, which now controls our economy and increasingly controls the political life of this country. We need a political revolution in this country involving millions of people who are prepared to stand up and say enough is enough, and I want to help lead that effort.
We can win this fight if we stand together.
We're in this race to win.
An unusual launch for a unique politician.
The rich have gotten away with murder.
This is not a tax on the rich. This is a tax on the very, very, very rich. I run vigorous campaigns.
But I think what the American people are saying, George, is that at a time when 99% of all new income is going to the top 1%, and when the top 1/10 of 1% owns almost as much wealth as the bottom 90%, maybe it's time for real political shakeup in this country and go beyond establishment politics.
Is it really possible for someone who calls himself a socialist to be elected president of the United States?
That's the problem. If you were to outline Bernie Sanders, what he would want to do, he is a socialist, by the way.
He's a democratic socialist. Have you ever visited Northern Europe, Adam?
Well, so long as we know what democratic socialism is, and if we know that in countries in Scandinavia, like Denmark, Norway, Sweden, they are very democratic countries. Obviously, the voter turnout is a lot higher than it is in the United States. In those countries, healthcare is a right of all people. In those countries, college education, graduate school is free. In those countries, retirement benefits, childcare are stronger than in the United States of America. And in those countries, government works for ordinary people. That's right. That's right. And what's wrong with that? What's wrong when you have more income and wealth equality? What's wrong when they have a stronger middle class in many ways than we do, a higher minimum wage than we do, and they're stronger on the environment than we do? Look, the fact of the matter is we do a lot in our country, which is good, but we can learn from other countries.
Historically, as I think most people know, the United States was the envy of the world for so many reasons. In our country, there was always the belief that regardless of your income, you had the opportunity to move up the economic ladder. There was not just the belief, but the reality that we had a great and expanding middle class. That if your dad and your mom didn't go to college, which was in fact the case in my family, you would have that opportunity to go to college. And there was this feeling that economically what America was about was the great middle class. But today, as all Americans know, our physical infrastructure is literally collapsing before our eyes. If we invested $1 trillion in rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure, we could create 13 million decent paying jobs and make this country more efficient and more productive.
You know, you said this campaign will be a clash of ideas. Which ideas? What are the biggest differences between you and Hillary Clinton?
Well, I think it has a lot to do with our records. In terms of climate change, I believe this is the great global environmental crisis of our time. I think we need extremely bold leadership. I have been leading the effort against the Keystone pipeline. In terms of trade, I believe that the trade agreements we've had from way back, NAFTA, CAFTA, permanent normal trade relations with China, have been a disaster. I voted against them. I'm helping to lead the effort against the Trans-Pacific Partnership so that we do not continue to see shutdowns of factories in America and the loss of millions of decent paying jobs. I think at a time when we have seen trillions of dollars shift from the middle class to the top 1/10 of 1%, we have got to say very frankly that the wealthiest people in this country and the largest corporations are going to have to start paying their fair share of taxes. Profitable corporations can't stash their money in the Cayman Islands and avoid about $100 billion a year in taxes. That's my view. Well, it's not just the Clinton Foundation. Here are my concerns, George, and it should be the concern of every American. And this is, in a sense, what my campaign is about. Can somebody who is not a billionaire, who stands for working families, actually win an election in which billionaires are pouring hundreds of millions of dollars into the election? It's not just Hillary. It is the Koch brothers. It is Sheldon Adelson. What I am saying is that I get very frightened about the future of American democracy when this becomes a battle between billionaires. I believe in one person, one vote. I believe we need a constitutional amendment to overturn Citizens United. And let me say this. On our first day that we were out, we asked people to get involved in our campaign. 100,000 people signed up. 35,000 people made donations to BernieSanders.com, and we raised on that first day $1.5 million. And you know what the average contribution was?
What was it?
$43. Well, let me just say this about my political career. I think few would argue that it is the most unusual political career in the United States Senate. Nobody thought that I would be elected mayor of Burlington, Vermont. Very few people thought that I would beat an incumbent Republican to become United States Congressman from Vermont by 16 points. And people weren't so sure I could beat the richest person in Vermont to become a United States Senator. So I would say, don't underestimate me.
In order to win this struggle, we are going to need nothing less than a political revolution. And let me tell you what I mean by a political revolution. When, as was the case in this last election in November, when 63% of the American people chose not to vote, when 80% of young people, when 75% of low-income workers chose not to vote, what we need to do is create a momentum so that 70, 80, 90% of the people vote, and when that happens, we win hands down. We can reverse climate change and transform our energy system. We can raise wages. We can make sure that every person in this country gets the education they need and desire. This is not some type of utopian dream. It can happen. It really can. But it will not happen unless we stand up and fight back for not only ourselves, but for our kids and future generations. Let's do it. Thank you all very much. Thank you. You're great. The point is that when millions of people stand up and fight, they win. That's it.